Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle, and you are listening to or watching Radio Maine, our video podcast where we explore and celebrate creativity and the human spirit. We are sponsored by the Portland Art Gallery in Portland, Maine, and today we have with us photographer Séan Alonzo Harris, who is with Séan Alonzo Harris Photography, and he is really an esteemed member of Maine and I would say the United States photography community. So we're really fortunate to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great. It's great to see you again,
yes,
by the way.
Yes, it's great to see you too. I think we used to overlap and intersect quite a bit, and then it's been a little while.
Right.
So I've been really intrigued by what I've seen coming out of your work over the last few years.
Oh, thank you.
Tell me how you think things have evolved for you and things that you're doing differently than perhaps when you and I first met a decade ago.
Well, I mean, life, just maturity and things happen. And the world has changed so dramatically over the last year, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. So the pattern of thinking has to change, and so like right now, the body of work that I'm most passionate about that I'm working on, I haven't even shown yet, which is the exact opposite of what anything that I've ever done before. So that is, it's more meditative and it's color based. It's, it's no people in it. It's very quiet and soft and just like a reflection going back and just like take a respite to think and gather your thoughts so that you can go on and be creative. Or to make it through the world or whatever, make it through the day.
Well, that is interesting because I know I was looking at your series Play Hard and also I'm Not a Stranger. Mm-hmm. And the Play Hard obviously is very action-oriented. Mm-hmm. And I'm Not a Stranger and Play Hard, both very people-oriented. You have a lot of people that appear in your work. Mm-hmm. So what caused you to turn in the direction of not figures at all?
Okay, so like Play Hard is a portion from a larger body of work. So that's just like the and that was based from Foxfield or Bayside, Portland, and where Foxfield is, it was based. That was basically that story or that body of work was about gentrification. And the I Am Not a Stranger was my wife works at Colby, so we moved to Waterville and Waterville Creates and Colby Museum of Art partnered to sponsor me to create these works of like a changing Waterville, like what it looks like now, and thinking about it like immediate right now to 100 years past, and seeing what that is, and claiming that like I am not a stranger, claiming that the place of Waterville is like all people are welcome, kind of, and that was also a nod to another photographer, one of who I call one of my masters, Irving Penn, and I adopted some of his ways to create that space for the people in Waterville to take ownership, almost like being on a corner or in a corner, So it's very exciting.
So those were bodies of work that had some sort of a foundation that you were working on,
right?
And this current body of work is a very different foundation.
I did a artist residency on Surf Point, which is, artist residence, it's right on the beach and everything. So I'm there and I had all these grandiose ideas and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And you get there and you're like, you're on the water. You can hear the water as you sleep. And I'm like, wow, this is really, really therapeutic. So I just kind of started thinking about this and stopped listening to music and going and waking up at the first light and take my camera out and shooting, and then throughout the day, and then after a while you're learning characteristics of what the ocean is doing and stuff, and you're like, wow, the ocean looks big today, the ocean looks small today, the ocean, oh wow, it was blue yesterday, now it's green, and all of these different characteristics that happen, and then you start thinking about a lot of things, the history of what goes on the ocean, and thinking about like how powerful the ocean is, how soft the ocean is, how relaxing the ocean, how scary it is, and all of these things that just happen. So just by going that and doing research and thinking things through, and basically, the whole time I was doing this, I was listening to music, most of the time, and listening to, trying to listen to complicated pieces, more things that challenge your hearing, but also at the same time looking at this very powerful thing that's coming in and out at you, and thinking about like the time that a song plays. Like if I listen to a piece that's 9 minutes, could an individual look at a photograph for 9 minutes today? And just kind of playing around with so thinking things through, really wanting to like create a body of work to challenge the viewers to sit with something for a while, and hence meditative, or hence critical thinking through an image, yeah.
This reminds me of something that you were talking about before we started recording, which is this idea of people's attention span. And I know that your background, you studied formally at the Art Institute of Boston. You spent time training at the Maine Media Workshops. I mean, you have a very rich kind of academic, intellectual background in photography. You also have a rich experiential background in photography. So you understand the history and the context and the making of photographs. And in this day and age, that's not true of everybody. And people's attention spans are not maybe as long as they once were. So what you're describing as your current body of work, it almost sounds like a kind of a response to that lack of attention, and an invitation.
Okay, let's look at where we're at as far as like anything that you want to do. I mean, like we have like computers, we have phones, we have watches, we have TVs, and all of those things that come at us, and me being a creative, I'm always going towards something, and sitting with that thing for a while and trying to figure it out, like problem solve or whatever. But and like, for instance, if you go to a museum today and you see how people go through a museum, or even the gallery, for instance, people don't sit and look and study. Like when I was growing up, people looked, sit and studied. Like you had to wait for someone you was polite. You had to wait for someone, and that person could be there for 10 minutes looking at one thing. Like people used to go to the galleries or like 4 days because they needed to get, that was the time that it would take someone to get through a show. Today, someone goes through and they're done. And it's just like that whole idea, like, and the artist itself could have taken, like I do platinum plating and printing. It could take me 3 days to create a print that I'm satisfied with, like from start to finish, in the printing process, not the shooting. But I just feel that we miss so much in the middle. You know what I mean? We miss, like, we don't think about like all of the learned experience in the middle, like that stuff we don't do anymore. So it's almost like, if you bring up like a ChatGPT, it's like, I love doing puzzles. I'll do a puzzle and it'll take me 3 days. And then like, I love doing puzzles. I'm going to hire this robot and I'm just going to say, complete this puzzle. And that's my prompt. And the puzzle's done. Someone comes over and says, wow, that's a great puzzle. That must have taken you a long time. No, it took me two minutes. You know what I mean? But they didn't touch the pieces. They didn't see, they didn't try, they didn't, oh, this is upside down, backwards, or any of that stuff it's gone. It's almost like our greatest attribute as humans or whatever is kind of stepped aside. So I think I hope that there's a resurgence of, like, it's great to see albums being sold again. People literally have to get up and turn it. Or it's great that film photography is mentioned in the breath of this great, you know what I mean? And also like people sewing their own clothes. And those things are so awesome to happen, but we just have to create a space. We have to continuously create space for that.
I'm thinking about my granddaughter. She was born in March. And before I even knew she was a twinkle in anyone's eye,
Right.
I began knitting a baby blanket for her. And it took me, it's a very small blanket. It took me a very long time.
Right.
And woven into that are the places that I took it while I was knitting it,
Right.
the mistakes that I made, the stitches I had to go back and pick up again, kind of the kinesthetic element of that.
Right.
And so what's coming up for me as you're describing this is the experience that ends up having a piece of art being imbued with, really,
Right.
because of the process of creating that art. So how do we convince people who think that art is essentially a visual medium in the moment? You just need to stand there for a minute to get an impression. How do we convince people or invite people, really? Would you like to slow down for a minute? Would you like to stand here a little longer? Would you like to be here with me as we enjoy this art together? How do we make that alluring to people?
That is a paradigm shift. And also, I think that, like as creatives or creative people, I think that we have to make that a part. We have to consider that as part of our practice as well. Like, how is the viewer going to take this in? Is there prompts? I'll use that. I'll steal that from AI. Is there prompts that we could weave into our work that can pause people? You know what I mean? Or have them think, like, wait a minute, there's this over here, and I have to go way over there to actually get the final piece. You know what I mean? Or things that involve more, the things that will involve people to actually engage with what they're doing differently. You know, I think that we have to think that through a little bit, because, you know, I mean, the greatest thing I believe that humans have is their creativity, you know, and that's, you know, and the creativity. So we'll always create no matter what. And it's like, and we'll evolve in creating as well, no matter what. But so I just think that, you know, I think that we just have to think differently. You know, we got to think beyond Instagram. We got to think beyond, you know, that, like, those kind of things, you know. We have to, as a lover of art, we also have to, respect what we're looking at. You know what I mean? And give it the, you know, thinking about someone painting a painting from hand, that painting might have taken years, you know, and it deserves more than a minute of viewing, because there's certain things in there that you're just not going to digest. There's no way that you can digest years of work in a minute. You know what I mean? It just can't happen. You can get the gist of it, but not the full body or the breadth of it. You know what I mean? Like the weight of it. So, you know, I think as viewers or I mean, you know, we have to respect that space as well.
I was interested to read about some of your inspirations as an artist. That you talked about Helen Levitt, James Van Der Zee, Langston Hughes, Nina Simone. Just that's a very, like, rich grouping of people across genres that are inspiring you.
Right.
And it seems as though you're drawing from the creativity that occurs not just in the visual field. You're drawing from creativity that really is from all around you. Has that always been the case for you?
Well, I think that's also maturity as well. Like, I believe that as a creative, that you have to create your own encyclopedia, and within that encyclopedia, I think that it shouldn't be like for me, for instance, it should be like painters and sculptors and writers and musicians and you know, and historians and those kind of things, and just pull from all of those. Because if I was just to study just photography, then I would be missing so much of the world. You know what I mean? My voice would be, I could take beautiful photographs, but my voice itself would be a lot smaller. So I have to go, like talking with, sometimes when I talk with young photographers, I was like, listening to something that challenges you, like something that you're like, oh, I hate it, but listen to it beyond that and see if, and challenge yourself and try to figure out cues within that so that you can say, oh, that's interesting, or that, you know what I mean? Versus just like, oh, I hate it, so I'm not going to listen to it. So I think a lot of times the people that inspire me sometimes, they might not have, at the first time, I might have looked over them. And over time, I've grown to appreciate what they bring to the table because, it's like, it happens very often where I see a body of work and I'm like, oh, it's not that much. And then I read about the person. I'm like, oh, I get it. You know what I mean? Because you can't, I think some art is created just for art's sake, but some art is created because people have to do it. And their story is just as much, just as important as their art, you know what I mean? And how they got to their art is sometimes so incredible and precious, I think that you should go out and challenge yourself, you know what I mean, for things, step in waters that you've never been in just to see what happens. And I also think it creates layers, tonality to the to whatever you bring to the table. It makes you much more interesting to talk to because you're coming from so many different places,
Well, that I think is very true. And as we were coming into the conversation today, we were talking with my husband, Kevin Thomas, who has his own podcast. He does ham radio. He now is sponsored by a company within the ham radio world. And you said, oh, that's so interesting. And I have this interest in tube amps.
Right.
And I said, wow, ham radio I never knew anything about. But here's Séan Alonzo Harris, and now he's talking about tube amps. What are those? Tell me about tube amps. So I guess since you're sitting here, can you tell me what are tube amps? Because you're so right. It's so interesting when you learn new things about people.
Well, I can tie this into my photography. Actually, throughout the years, I've listened, like in the dark room. I've always picked out a slew of music that I would print to, and I started with the same music and I ended with the same music because it all had to do with rhythm and timing. Because in the dark room, you're dodging and burning. You kind of want to keep that same cadence. And, through that, or I can even go back further. When I was in college, I lived right next to a used record store, and I would walk by the record store every day, and I would see these beautiful album covers. And then I'd go in, so I started buying jazz album covers because they're so gorgeous and beautiful. But hints to the darkroom to bring on the practice with listening to music, and then hints to talking with other older photographers who I figure mentors and that kind of thing. And we end up talking about music sometimes more than photography. And we talk about music in terms of tone and layers and texture and all of these things, and space and all of these things. And so hence to today, where you talk about like something like a tube amp, where it's this because it has distortion, but it's good distortion, which creates space and layers and things like this. So it gives a more three-dimensional sound. So it's so intriguing to listen to that. And it's like one of those things when I'm listening to this and talking about my work earlier today, it really kind of starts playing and making sense. So it's almost like the sound almost like, because it's like one of those things that, because of tube amp, you can pick different tubes to create different sounds, or different, like, you can have something that's a warmer sound, or a brighter sound, or something with a larger sound stage. And this is all like, I want to get this kind of tube. And, so it's almost like you're developing your own personal sound through this electronics that was made, like some of the first listening devices that we had back in the day. I mean, you can still do it with, you can do this all with equalizers and stuff too, but it doesn't have the same resonance, I guess I should say. It's like looking at, like, if you're like a printer and you're looking at a black and white, traditional black and white print to a digital black and white print. If you're a true printer, you'd be like, that's digital, because you're so far advanced in the viewing process of that. So if you're like almost like listening to like a solid state amp versus a tube amp, you might be like, wow, that sounds really good. Wow, that sounds really good, but you might not hear all the nuances. So it's something that I enjoy. You know what I mean? I can't play an instrument, but I can listen, which is good.
I do love this idea that you're working with layers in photography, even though when most of us look at an image, we think, oh, that's flat.
Right.
And it is, technically it is two-dimensional, but
right.
this description that you have of photography being a layering process,
right.
It changes the way I think about that art.
As a two-dimensional artist, it could be really boring if you thought about it as like 2 dimensions, I think. You know what I mean? So you have to, what we do have is we have foreground, background, you know what I mean? And we have like horizon line, and we have all of these things, and so we can play around with, the shapes in our image. We can play around with the tonality in the image. We can play around with. So we have we have to use so many different ways to create that space and layering. It could be through tonality. It could be through placement of what's in your image. It could be through framing. It could be through, and all of these things that happen. And to me, I think one of the interesting things about like thinking about like photography and music is like music layering, or music, how they create their sound, or you know what I mean, with music and stuff. If you have a note, you can go above and below, and you can play around with different things in different places. It's very similar. Like if you like look at some legendary like Paul Capernegro, who was a classic pianist, you know what I mean? That's how he thought about printing, or even Ansel Adams, I'm sure that there's tons more out there that approached it in the same way. So it's not a foreign idea. It's actually it's a tried true way of approaching a visual language. You know what I mean? So. And I just it is what it is. It's just this amazing way to think about it, because you have this window of like something. Like there was this one photographer who said, he was on the Charlie Rose show, and he's like, is there anything that you haven't is there something that you haven't photographed that you want to photograph? And the photographer said, the wind. And you think about that in terms of like, how can you photograph the wind? And so yeah, you'd have to be you have to think outside the box, but also you could say the same thing about sound. Like, that sounds to me like someone who listens to a lot of music, because the wind does have a sound. And if you could capture the wind, then your image potentially could be considered sound, which is, I don't know, that could be like a little bit far-fetched, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, I do, and I think one of the ways that you and I intersected way back was some of that you also do work with words. You work with people in print.
Right.
So you're working in parallel with somebody who writes, and you're bringing your own version of that story. You're not necessarily telling the print story, the word story,
Right.
but you're bringing your version of that story and you're putting it next to these words, and they still have to work together.
Right.
Which I think is different than the way a lot of people think about it. A lot of people think, here's the words. The photographer looks at the words and says, oh, I'm going to go take a picture of that word just in a visual.
Right.
But that's actually not the way that stories evolve, at least not in my experience of writing. So how do you manage working across mediums that you're trying to bring a story into the world?
Yeah, because I love collaborating and trying to first of all, you have to give great respect to writers, I think, because of what they bring to the table, and you also have to be curious about your subject matter and your subject, so those come about by just like listening, being curious, asking questions, and really being part, and also inviting people into your process, so that your process can grow and be better. And so it's when done right, it's an incredibly rewarding and enjoyable thing to do. So it's something that I wish I did more of. I mean, some of my favorite books are Langston Hughes and Roy DeCarava. It's like sticky. The Sticky Life of Flypaper, which is an amazing book, and it's Langston Hughes poetry and Roy DeCarava's imagery, and it's just wonderful. They were done at different times, and there's also this beautiful book that I got just recently, and it was Richard Avedon and James Baldwin, and this was a great. I mean, it's just this magical world that's created between these two masters of their field. And they're collaborating in this way with words and images, and I wish I could do it more. I mean, you know what I mean? But it's really hard. I think sometimes it's really hard to, it's in the editorial world, it's like, well, I like your style, and I like your style of photography, I like your style of writing, and we think you're right for this fit, and go and do this, you know what I mean? But in the I think in the fine art world, it's a little trickier because when you're creating in a space, I mean, artists are really private, and they go into their battlefields, you know, and they battle it out, and then they go into their workshops, and then they work it out, and then you have to open all that up, and so and that's a scary process because it's like that space that you've created to protect whatever you're doing, and then you open it up, and that's a different kind of vulnerability than other types of vulnerability. So, it's you have to strive towards it. You have to really work and really you have to really work in realizing that everyone around you is in that same boat. It's just not you that's doing that, but they're doing it too. And how do you collaborate in a way and create that synergy to create a piece of work that everyone's proud of, not just you.
Another way that I got to know you was as a teacher, and it was by reputation. You've never taught me, much to my chagrin, of course, but I think being able to translate what you're saying into something that somebody who is a learner can hear is its own set of skills, its own very special creativity. So how have you evolved as a teacher, as an instructor, as someone who's sharing your own knowledge, your own love of this genre? How have you evolved over the years?
How I approach it is I try to, like, okay, so for instance, photography, I try to teach photography through life experiences, ask questions about what's going on and tease out, because I think I think that my goal is for people is to find your own voice with whatever you're doing, so that you can continuously develop it. That doesn't mean like everything you're going to do is the same. Your voice can change. I mean, your voice changes constantly, or your views change, or whatever it is. But to have that knowledge of understanding. So first I have them study. I was like, pick out someone that you like, whatever it is, study them, try to pick out cues that are that continuously come over. You know what I mean? And then go back and then revisit all of that material, because you'll find a thread, and then you'll start to understand that the link that they're trying to do. If it's a writer, then it wouldn't be a visual, but they could be creating visuals, you know what I mean? Visuals for you to think, but start there and then apply that to life experiences. What is it like? There was this one time when I was teaching this guy who was an architect, and he wanted to do photography, and he brought his body of work, and he had people, he had like animals, he had family, and he had these interesting doors that he would photograph. And and through looking at his work, I realized it's like, wow, like this stuff is good, but this stuff right here, I can see like this is where you understand this. You get this. This is a very unique way of you seeing this. You're bringing this is just a plain door, but the way that you approach this door is very unique. Like, you're approaching this door through the lens of an architect, where you're giving me more information than I had from just walking up to it. So. And just teasing, and he's like, wow, I never thought about it that way. And so just teasing out those things. And then I'm like, go study Frank Lloyd Wright. You know what I mean? Study like these other architects and look, and there's photographs in there, read their writings and stuff. And just kind of, so then you can build up a vocabulary. So then you can build up these other nuances about if this is where you want to go, if this is part of your voice, and also, because photography or art is therapeutic in a lot of ways. So, sometimes you have to tease out other things as well, just to kind of get to the root of why are you here right now, So, yeah.
So meeting people where they are and trying to walk along with them.
You don't have to be a professional artist to use art as a way of being a better person, or you know what I mean, or being creative to be a better person. I think that itself could be a study and self, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of critical thinking, there's a lot of failures, there's a lot of successes, there's like, I don't know what this is, you know what I mean? So those are all questions that we ask ourselves every day but in a safe space where we can analyze them in a different way. So I think that it comes back to just being observant on what's going on, so that you can go ahead and create, and also live a better life, be more mindful.
Well, I'm really looking forward to your series, your meditative series. When do you think that this will be finished?
Well, it's kind of finished. It's right now, it's more me trying to, it's such a departure. And, it's such a departure from what I've done before. It's like one of those things that I really have to think I have to think deep and hard about what and how, and relevance, and also there's so many questions I still have about it. And that's a good thing, because I'm going to tease out so much more, So, so hopefully next year. Okay. Hopefully next year, maybe give me 2 years, maybe. I don't know. It's like I haven't had a solo show in about, I don't know, maybe 3 years or so. So, so I'm due.
Well, whenever this is brought into the world, I will be very interested in seeing it, because it seems like something that we all should be paying attention to. The sitting and being present and experiencing the world in a little bit slower way than we have been.
The world's moving really fast, and it's up to us to. I think sometimes you feel like if you don't move at the speed of the world, then you're losing out, and that's not true. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, you're moving at the speed of the world, and your relationships suffer. You know what I mean? Your healthcare suffers. All of these other things suffer because you feel like you have to keep up with everything. And I think sometimes you have to step off and just like, whoa, wait a minute, grab your bearings and refuel, re-energize, and then if your need is to get back up there and do that again, maybe you'll be better at you might be stronger, so you can keep up with it a little differently. But sometimes we just need to pause for a second, like, whoa.
I really have enjoyed reconnecting with you, Séan. It's been a pleasure.
Too. Yeah. It has been a lot of fun. Yeah. It's good.
Well, I'll be looking for your work.
Thank you.
I will encourage people who are interested in learning more about Séan Alonzo Harris from Séan Alonzo Harris Photography to go online, and I'm sure that once the show is announced, that will be on your website. So then hopefully you'll go in person to see this work, because I think that's what it really deserves. But in the meantime, it's been a pleasure to talk with Séan Alonzo Harris here on Radio Maine. I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle, and you've been listening to our video podcast where we explore and celebrate creativity and the human spirit. We are sponsored by the Portland Art Gallery in Portland, Maine. And certainly I would count amongst our wonderful Maine creatives, Séan Alonzo Harris. So thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun. I had a great day.